It has this signal failing. Nearly every conversation that takes place on Slashdot is shot through with discussion, griping and gaming on the moderation system itself. The core task of Slashdot has become editorship. Not the putative subjects of Slashdot posts. The fact that the central task of Slashdot is to rate other Slashdotters creates a tenor of meanness in the discussion. Imagine if the subtext of every discussion you had in the real world was a kind of running, pedantic nitpickery in which every point was explicitly weighed and judged and commented upon. You'd be an unpleasant, unlikable jerk, the kind of person that is sometimes referred to as a slashdork. As radical as Yahoo's conceit was, Slashdot's was more radical. But as radical as Slashdot's is, it is still inherently conservative in that it presumes that editorship is necessary, and that it further requires human judgment and intervention. Google's a lot more radical. Instead of editors, it has an algorithm. Not the kind of algorithm that dominated the early search engines like AltaVista, in which laughably bad artificial intelligence engines attempted to automatically understand the content, context and value of every page on the web so that a search for dog would turn up the page more relevant to the query. Google's algorithm is predicated on the idea that people are good at understanding things and computers are good at counting things. Google counts up all the links on the web and affords more authority to those pages that have been linked to by the most other pages. The rationale is that if a page has been linked to by many web authors, then they must have seen some merit in that page. This system works remarkably well, so well that it's nearly inconceivable that any search engine would order its rankings by any other means. What's more, it doesn't pervert the tenor of the discussions and pages that it catalogs by turning each one into a performance for a group of ranking peers. FN. Or at least, it didn't. Today, dedicated web writers, such as bloggers, are keenly aware of the way that Google will interpret their choices about linking and page structure. One popular sport is Googlebombing, in which web writers collude to link to a given page using a humorous keyword so that the page becomes the top result for that word, which is why, for a time, the top result for More Evil Than Satan was Microsoft.com. Likewise, the practice of blog spamming, in which unscrupulous spammers post links to their web pages in the message boards on various blogs, so that Google will be tricked into thinking that a wide variety of sites have conferred some authority onto their penis enlargement page. But even Google is conservative in assuming that there is a need for editorship as distinct from composition. Is there a way we can dispense with editorship altogether and just use composition to refine our ideas? Can we merge composition and editorship into a single role, fusing our creative and critical selves? You betcha. Wikis FN. Hawaiian for fast are websites that can be edited by anyone. They were invented by Ward Cunningham in 1995, and they have become one of the dominant tools for Internet collaboration in the present day. Indeed, there is a sort of Internet geek who throws up a wiki in the same way that ants make anthills, reflexively, unconsciously. Here's how a wiki works. You put up a page. Welcome to my wiki. It is rad. There are other wikis that inspired me. Click publish and bam, the page is live. The word other wikis will be underlined, having automatically been turned into a link to a blank page titled Other Wikis. Wiki software recognizes words with capital letters in the middle of them as links to other pages. Wiki people call this camel case, because the capital letters in the middle of words make them look like humped camels. At the bottom of it appears this legend. Edit this page. Click on Edit this page and the text appears in an editable field. Revise the text to your heart's content and click Publish and your revisions are live. Anyone who visits a wiki can edit any of its pages, adding to it, improving on it, adding camel-cased links to new subjects, or even defacing or deleting it. It is authorship without editorship. Or authorship fused with editorship. Whichever, it works, though it requires effort. The Internet, like all human places and things, is fraught with spoilers and vandals who deface whatever they can. Wiki pages are routinely replaced with obscenities, with links to spammers' websites, with junk and crap and flames. But wikis have self-defense mechanisms, too. Anyone can subscribe to a wiki page, and be notified when it is updated. Those who create wiki pages generally opt to act as gardeners for them, ensuring that they are on hand to undo the work of the spoilers. In this labor, they are aided by another useful wiki feature. The history link. Every change to every wiki page is logged and recorded. Anyone can page back through every revision, and anyone can revert the current version to a previous one. That means that vandalism only lasts as long as it takes for a gardener to come by and, with 1 or 2 clicks, set things to right. This is a powerful and wildly successful model for collaboration, and there is no better example of this than the Wikipedia, a free wiki-based encyclopedia with more than 1 million entries, which has been translated into 198 languages (FN). That is, one or more Wikipedia entries have been translated into 198 languages. More than 15 languages have 10.000 or more entries translated. Wikipedia is built entirely out of wiki pages created by self-appointed experts. Contributors research and write up subjects, or produce articles on subjects that they are familiar with. This is authorship, but what of editorship? For if there is one thing a guide or an encyclopedia must have, it is authority. It must be vetted by trustworthy, neutral parties, who present something that is either the truth or simply a truth, but truth nevertheless. The Wikipedia has its skeptics. Al Fasolt, a writer for the Syracuse Post-Standard, apologized to his readers for having recommended that they consult Wikipedia. A reader of his, a librarian, wrote in and told him that his recommendation had been irresponsible, for Wikipedia articles are often defaced or worse still, rewritten with incorrect information. When another journalist from the TechDirt website wrote to Fasolt to correct this impression, Fasolt responded with an increasingly patronizing and hysterical series of messages in which he described Wikipedia as outrageous, repugnant, and dangerous, insulting the TechDirt writer and storming off in a huff. FN, chttp, techdirt.com/articles/20040827/0132238_f.shtml for more. Spurred on by this exchange, many of Wikipedia's supporters decided to empirically investigate the accuracy and resilience of the system. Alex Halavey made changes to 13 different pages, ranging from obvious to subtle. Every single change was found and corrected within hours. FN, chttp, alex.halavey.net/news/index.php.p=794 for more. Then legendary Princeton engineer Ed Felton ran side-by-side comparisons of Wikipedia entries on areas in which he had deep expertise with their counterparts in the current electronic edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica. His conclusion: Wikipedia's advantage is in having more, longer, and more current entries. If it weren't for the Microsoft case entry, Wikipedia would have been the winner hands down. Britannica's advantage is in having lower variance in the quality of its entries. FN, http://www.freedom-to-tinker.com/archives/0000675.html for more. Not a complete win for Wikipedia, but hardly outrageous, repugnant, and dangerous. Poor Fasolt, his idiotic hyperbole will surely haunt him through the whole of his career. Repugnant. There has been one very damning and even frightening indictment of Wikipedia, which came from Ethan Zuckerman, the founder of the Geekcore Group, which sends volunteers to poor countries to help establish Internet service providers and do other good works through technology. Zuckerman, a Harvard Berkman Center Fellow, is concerned with the systemic bias in a collaborative encyclopedia whose contributors must be conversant with technology and in possession of same in order to improve on the work there. Zuckerman reasonably observes that Internet users skew towards wealth, residence in the world's richest countries, and a technological bent. This means that the Wikipedia, too, is skewed to subjects of interest to that group, subjects where that group already has expertise and interest. The result is tragicomical. The entry on the Congo Civil War, the largest military conflict the world has seen since World War II, which has claimed over 3 million lives, has only a fraction of the verbiage devoted to the War of the Ents, a fictional war fought between sentient trees in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Zuckerman issued a public call to arms to rectify this, challenging Wikipedia contributors to seek out information on subjects like Africa's military conflicts, nursing and agriculture, and write these subjects up in the same loving detail given over to science fiction novels and contemporary youth culture. His call has been answered well. What remains is to infiltrate the Wikipedia into the academe so that term papers, Master's and doctoral theses on these subjects find themselves in whole or in part on the Wikipedia, fn see http://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/user.ext/crossbow for more on this. But if Wikipedia is authoritative, how does it get there? What alchemy turns the maunderings of mouth breathers with modems into valid, useful encyclopedia entries? It all comes down to the way that disputes are deliberated over and resolved. Take the entry on Israel. At one point, it characterized Israel as a beleaguered state set upon by terrorists who would drive its citizens into the sea. Not long after, the entry was deleted halus bolus and replaced with one that described Israel as an illegal state practicing apartheid on an oppressed ethnic minority. Back and forth the editors went, each overriding the others with his or her own doctrine. But eventually, one of them blinked. An editor moderated the doctrine just a little, conceding a single point to the other. And the other responded in kind. In this way, turn by turn, all those with a strong opinion on the matter negotiated a kind of truth, a collection of statements that everyone could agree represented as neutral a depiction of Israel as was likely to emerge. Whereupon, the joint authors of this marvelous document joined forces and fought back to resist the revisions of other doctrinaires who came later, preserving their hard-won peace. Fn. This process was just repeated in microcosm in the Wikipedia entry on the author of this paper, which was replaced by a rather disparaging and untrue entry that characterized his books as critical and commercial failures. There ensued several editorial volleys, culminating in an uneasy piece that couches the anonymous detractor's skepticism in context and qualifiers that make it clear what the facts are and what is speculation. What's most fascinating about these entries isn't their final text as currently present on Wikipedia. It is the history page for each. Blow-by-blow revision lists that make it utterly transparent where the bodies were buried on the way to arriving at whatever truth has emerged. This is a neat solution to the problem of authority. If you want to know what the fully rounded view of opinions on any controversial subject look like, you need only consult its entry's history page for a blistering eyeful of thorough debate on the subject. And here, finally, is the answer to the mostly harmless problem. Ford's editor can trim his verbiage to 2 words, but they need not stay there. Arthur, or any other user of the guide as we know it today, FN, that is, in the era where we understand enough about technology to know the difference between a microprocessor and a hard drive, can revert to Ford's glorious and exhaustive version. Think of it, a guide without space restrictions and without editors, where any Vogan can publish to his heart's content. Lovely. Warhol is turning in his grave, originally published in The Guardian. November 13, 2007. The excellent little programmer book for the National Portrait Gallery's current show POPARTPORTRAITS has a lot to say about the pictures hung on the walls, about the diverse source material the artists drew from in producing their provocative works. They cut up magazines, copied comic books, drew in trademarked cartoon characters like Minnie Mouse, reproduced covers from Time magazine, made ironic use of the cartoon figure of Charles Atlas, painted over an iconic photo of James Dean or Elvis Presley, and that's just in the first room of 7. The programmer book describes the aesthetic experience of seeing these repositioned icons of culture high and low, the art created by the celebrated artists Poons, Rauschenberg, Warhol, et al. By nicking the work of others, without permission, and remaking it to make statements and evoke emotions never countenanced by the original creators. However, the book does not say a word about copyright. Can you blame it? A treatise on the way that copyright and trademark had to be, trammeled to make these works could fill volumes. Reading the programmer book, you have to assume that the curator's only message about copyright is that where free expression is concerned, the rights of the creators of the original source material appropriated by the pop school take a back seat. There is, however, another message about copyright in the National Portrait Gallery. It's implicit in the "No Photography" signs prominently placed throughout the halls, including one right by the entrance of the POPARTPORTRAITS exhibition. This isn't intended to protect the works from the depredations of camera flashes. It would read no flash photography if this were so. No, the ban on pictures is in place to safeguard the copyright in the works hung on the walls, a fact that every gallery staffer I spoke to instantly affirmed when I asked about the policy. Indeed, it seems that every square centimeter of the portrait gallery is under some form of copyright. I wasn't even allowed to photograph the no photographs sign. A museum staffer explained that she'd been told that the typography and layout of the no photographs legend was, itself, copyrighted. If this is true, then presumably, the same rules would prevent anyone from taking any pictures in any public place. Unless you could somehow contrive to get a shot of Leicester Square without any writing, logos, architectural facades, or images in it. I doubt Warhol could have done it. What's the message of the show, then? Is it a celebration of remix culture, reveling in the endless possibilities opened up by appropriating and reusing without permission? Or is it the epitaph on the tombstone of the sweet days before the UN's chartering of the World Intellectual Property Organization and the ensuing mania for turning everything that can be sensed and recorded into someone's property? Does this show, paid for with public money, with some works that are themselves owned by public institutions, seek to inspire us to become 21st-century pops, armed with camera phones, websites and mixers, or is it supposed to inform us that our chance has passed, and we'd best settle for a life as information serfs, who can't even make free use of what our eyes see, our ears hear, of the streets we walk upon? Perhaps, just perhaps, it's actually a Dadaist show masquerading as a pop art show. Perhaps the point is to titillate us with the delicious irony of celebrating copyright infringement while simultaneously taking the view that even the no photography sign is a form of property. Not to be reproduced without the permission that can never be had. $. The Future of Ignoring Things, originally published on Information Week's Internet Evolution. October 3, 2007. For decades, computers have been helping us to remember, but now it's time for them to help us to ignore. Take email. Endless engineer hours are poured into stopping spam, but virtually no attention is paid to our interaction with our non-spam messages. Our mailer may strive to learn from our ratings what is and is not spam, but it expends practically no effort on figuring out which of the non-spam emails are important and which ones can be safely ignored. Dropped into archival folders, or deleted unread. For example, I'm forever getting CC'd on busy threads by well-meaning colleagues who want to loop me in on some discussion in which I have little interest. Maybe the initial group invitation to a dinner that I'll be out of town for was something I needed to see, but now that I've declined. I really don't need to read the 300+ messages that follow debating the best place to eat. I could write a mail rule to ignore the thread, of course. But mail rule editors are clunky, and once your rule list grows very long, it becomes increasingly unmanageable. Mail rules are where bookmarks were before the bookmark site del.icio.us showed up, built for people who might want to ensure that messages from the boss show up in red, but not intended to be used as a gigantic storehouse of a million filters, a crude means for telling the computers what we don't want to see. Rael Dornfest, the former chairman of the O'Reilly Emerging Tech Conference and founder of the startup iWantSandy, once proposed an ignore thread feature for mailers. Flag a thread as uninteresting, and your mailer will start to hide messages with that subject line or thread ID for a week, unless those messages contain your name. The problem is that threads mutate. Last week's dinner plans become this week's discussion of next year's group holiday. If the thread is still going after a week, the messages flow back into your inbox, and a single click takes you back through all the messages you missed. We need a million measures like this, adaptive systems that create a gray zone between delete on site and show this to me right away. RSS readers are a great way to keep up with the torrent of new items posted on high-turnover sites like Dig, but they're even better at keeping up with sites that are sporadic, like your friend's brilliant journal that she only updates twice a year. But RSS readers don't distinguish between the rare and miraculous appearance of a new item in an occasional journal and the latest click fodder from Slashdot. They don't even sort your RSS feeds according to the sites that you click through the most. There was a time when I could read the whole of Usenet, not just because I was a student looking for an excuse to avoid my assignments, but because Usenet was once tractable, readable by a single determined person. Today, I can't even keep up with a single high-traffic message board. I can't read all my email. I can't read every item posted to every site I like. I certainly can't plow through the entire edit history of every Wikipedia entry I read. I've come to grips with this, with acquiring information on a probabilistic basis, instead of the old, deterministic, cover-to-cover approach I learned in the offline world. It's as though there's a cognitive style built into TCP/IP. Just as the network only does best effort delivery of packets. Not worrying so much about the bits that fall on the floor. TCP/IP users also do best effort sweeps of the Internet. Focusing on learning from the good stuff they find, rather than lamenting the stuff they don't have time to see. The network won't ever become more tractable. There will never be fewer things vying for our online attention. The only answer is better ways and new technology to ignore stuff, a field that's just being born, with plenty of room to grow. Facebook's Faceplant, originally published as How Your Creepy Ex-Coworkers Will Kill Facebook, in Information Week. November 26, 2007. Facebook's platform strategy has sparked much online debate and controversy. No one wants to see a return to the miserable days of walled gardens, when you couldn't send a message to an AOL subscriber unless you, too, were a subscriber, and when the only services that made it were the ones that AOL management approved. Those of us on the real Internet regarded AOL with a species of superstitious dread, a hive of clueless noobs waiting to swamp our beloved Usenet with dumb flame wars. We fiercely guarded our erudite flame wars as being of a palpably superior grade, the wellspring of an. Facebook is no paragon of virtue. It bears the hallmarks of the kind of pump and dump service that sees us as sticky, monetizable eyeballs in need of pimping. The clue is in the steady stream of emails you get from Facebook. So-and-so has sent you a message, yeah, what is it? Facebook isn't telling, you have to visit Facebook to find out. Generate a banner impression, and read and write your messages using the halt and lame Facebook interface, which lags even end-of-life email clients like Eudora for composing, reading, filtering, archiving and searching. Emails from Facebook aren't helpful messages. They're eyeball bait, intended to send you off to the Facebook site, only to discover that Fred wrote "Hi again" on your wall, like other social apps. Evite cough. Facebook has all the social graces of a nose-picking, hyperactive 6-year-old, standing at the threshold of your attention and chanting, "I know something. I know something. I know something." Won't tell you what it is. If there was any doubt about Facebook's lack of qualification to displace the Internet with a benevolent dictatorship, walled garden, it was removed when Facebook unveiled its new advertising campaign. Now, Facebook will allow its advertisers use the profile pictures of Facebook users to advertise their products, without permission or compensation. Even if you're the kind of person who likes the sound of a benevolent dictatorship, this clearly isn't one. Many of my colleagues wonder if Facebook can be redeemed by opening up the platform, letting anyone write any app for the service, easily exporting and importing their data, and so on. This is the kind of thing Google is doing with its Open Social Alliance. Perhaps if Facebook takes on some of the characteristics that made the web work, openness, decentralization, standardization, it will become like the web itself, but with the added pixie dust of social, the indefinable characteristic that makes Facebook into pure crack for a significant proportion of Internet users. The debate about redeeming Facebook starts from the assumption that Facebook is snowballing toward critical mass, the point at which it begins to define the Internet for a large slice of the world's netizens, growing steadily every day. But I think that this is far from a sure thing. Sure, networks generally follow Metcalfe's law. The value of a telecommunications network is proportional to the square of the number of users of the system. This law is best understood through the analogy of the fax machine. A world with one fax machine has no use for faxes, but every time you add a fax, you square the number of possible send, receive combinations. Alice can fax Bob or Carol or Don. Bob can fax Alice. Carol and Don. Carol can fax Alice. Bob and Don, etc. But Metcalfe's law presumes that creating more communications pathways increases the value of the system, and that's not always true. See Brooks' law. Adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. Having watched the rise and fall of 6 Degrees, Friendster, and the many other proto-hominids that make up the evolutionary chain leading to Facebook. MySpace, et al. I'm inclined to think that these systems are subject to a Brooks law parallel. Adding more users to a social network increases the probability that it will put you in an awkward social circumstance. Perhaps we can call this Boyd's law. Note to editor. Boyd is always lowercase for Dana to editor. Dana to Boyd, the social scientist who has studied many of these networks from the inside as a keen-eyed net anthropologist and who has described the many ways in which social software does violence to sociability in a series of sharp papers. Here's one of Boyd's examples, a true story. A young woman, an elementary school teacher, joins Friendster after some of her Burning Man buddies send her an invite. All is well until her students sign up and notice that all the friends in her profile are sunburnt. Drug-addled techno-pagans whose own profiles are adorned with digital photos of their painted genitals flapping over the playa. The teacher inveigles her friends to clean up their profiles, and all is well again until her boss, the school principal, signs up to the service and demands to be added to her friends list. The fact that she doesn't like her boss doesn't really matter, in the social world of Friendster and its progeny. It's perfectly valid to demand to be friended in an explicit fashion that most of us left behind in the 4th grade. Now that her boss is on her friends list, our teacher friends' buddies naturally assume that she is one of the tribe and begin to send her lascivious Friendstergrams, inviting her to all sorts of dirty fun times. In the real world, we don't articulate our social networks. Imagine how creepy it would be to wander into a co-worker's cubicle and discover the wall covered with tiny photos of everyone in the office, ranked by friend and foe, with the top 8 friends elevated to a small shrine decorated with post-it roses and hearts. And yet, there's an undeniable attraction to corralling all your friends and friendly acquaintances, charting them and their relationship to you. Maybe it's evolutionary, some quirk of the neocortex dating from our evolution into social animals who gained advantage by dividing up the work of survival but acquired the tricky job of watching all the other monkeys so as to be sure that everyone was pulling their weight and not. E.g. napping in the treetops instead of watching for predators, emerging only to eat the fruit the rest of us have foraged. Keeping track of our social relationships is a serious piece of work that runs a heavy cognitive load. It's natural to seek out some neural prosthesis for assistance in this chore. My fiancé once proposed a social scheduling application that would watch your phone and email and IM to figure out who your pals were and give you a little alert if too much time passed without your reaching out to say hello and keep the coals of your relationship aglow. By the time you've reached your 40s, chances are you're out of touch with more friends than you're in touch with old summer camp chums. High school mates, ex-spouses and their families, former coworkers, college roomies. .com veterans. Getting all those people back into your life is a full-time job and then some. You'd think that Facebook would be the perfect tool for handling all this. It's not. For every long-lost chum who reaches out to me on Facebook, there's a guy who beat me up on a weekly basis through the whole 7th grade but now wants to be my buddy, or the crazy person who was fun in college but is now kinda sad, or the creepy ex-coworker who I'd cross the street to avoid but who now wants to know. Am I your friend, yes or no this instant, please? It's not just Facebook and it's not just me. Every social networking service has had this problem and every user I've spoken to has been frustrated by it. I think that's why these services are so volatile, why we're so willing to flee from Friendster and into MySpace's loving arms, from MySpace to Facebook. It's socially awkward to refuse to add someone to your friends list, but removing someone from your friend list is practically a declaration of war. The least awkward way to get back to a friends list with nothing but friends on it is to reboot, create a new identity on a new system and send out some invites. Of course, chances are at least one of those invites will go to someone who'll groan and wonder why we're dumb enough to think that we're pals. That's why I don't worry about Facebook taking over the net. As more users flock to it, the chances that the person who precipitates your exodus will find you increases. Once that happens, poof, away you go, and Facebook joins 6 degrees. Friendster and their pals on the scrap heap of net history. $. The Future of Internet Immune Systems, originally published on Information Week's Internet Evolution. November 19, 2007. Bunhill Cemetery is just down the road from my flat in London. It's a handsome old boneyard, a former plague pit, Bone Hill, as in, there are so many bones under there that the ground is actually kind of humped up into a hill. There are plenty of luminaries buried there, John Pilgrim's Progress Bunyan, William Blake, Daniel Defoe, and assorted Cromwells. But my favorite tomb is that of Thomas Bayes, the 18th-century statistician for whom Bayesian filtering is named. Bayesian filtering is plenty useful. Here's a simple example of how you might use a Bayesian filter. First,